We're here today listening to these talks to reflect on our planet and all the different ways we can come together and care for our home. I'm not going to lie, the situation on our planet isn't really that great, but it is really exciting because of the range of opportunities and solutions we get to take advantage of. And they can be anything from organizing your peers, voting, making art. Really, the opportunities are endless. I personally really love doing research. So today I'm going to make the case for community-based science and community-based research as a way for us to come together and care for our home. So community-based research is kind of a long term, so I'm going to break it down. And I'm going to start by talking about research. I love being underwater and observing our oceans. Ever since I was little, my dad would take me snorkeling, and once that mask was on my face, it was impossible to peel me away. Below the surface, I was exposed to the most incredible cities. The corals in the rocks were the buildings, the fish, the residents teeming around, and the purple sea fans moving with the current were the public art displays available for everyone to enjoy. It turns out that a lot of the observations I was making underwater are really valuable pieces of information. And as I started scuba diving and snorkeling more regularly, I started to learn the names of the fish, and then the names of the algae, and then the names of the corals. And then I learned that you can actually write underwater. So I started to take notes, and I wrote about the different organisms I saw, how many I saw, and different measurements that helped us determine the state of the reef. In college, I was actually able to spend time in coral reefs in Tahiti and in kelp forests in Monterey Bay in California and record this data. So I would take my slate, I would write down everything I saw and report it, usually to an Excel sheet to go to a professor. It turns out that this is called field work, and it's a way that you can get like school credit done, which was super exciting for me. Now, you might be thinking, of course she's going to say research is awesome because she gets to spend time in her favorite places. But you might be wondering how this is actually useful to us in caring for our planet and our home. Well, it turns out that to really be able to address a problem, you need to understand what is happening. In my field, we call this setting up a baseline. And a baseline is basically when you go to a place for the first time, you look around, you take measurements, you record data, and you make all your observations. Every time you come back to that place, you're going to take more information. The baseline is your starting point. As time goes by, you're going to compare your most recent observations to the first one. And by making that comparison, you're able to see if the place you're interested in is getting healthier, if it stayed the same, or if that system is degrading. This is particularly important because as we're dealing with really global problems to our planet and biodiversity, we need to really be effective in the solutions we implement. So by collecting adequate data, we can see if the solutions that we're rolling out are working or not. And if they're not, we know to refocus our energy and try something else. I do want to make a quick note about research because the way that research and science are done isn't always the greatest. It comes from a racist and colonial history, and there's a lot of great parts of science, but the system has a lot of problems in its design. A particular phenomenon I want to talk about is parachute science because it impacts a lot of the places where I work. And this is what happens when a researcher from a university or other place comes in, collects a lot of data, and just writes back out. They publish their paper and they never really interact with the community where they were and don't really provide them with the information that can be really useful for them to manage the places where they live and that they love. It's not always done this way. I know a lot of great researchers who have pretty deep connections to the places where they work, but they're not able to be there all of the time. And from an information standpoint, this isn't ideal because the more information we have on a place, the fuller the picture is of what's happening. Who does have that information? The people who are there every day and who have been there for generations. Lastly, I want to make another point about science, and it's that science and field work aren't necessarily the most approachable fields. A lot of people think that to be a scientist, you need multiple degrees and fancy training, tons of papers published, and years of experience. And something I want to say is that that's not actually true. Anyone can be a scientist, you just need to observe the world around you. A lot of times, it's pretty easy and pretty fun. You just have to be willing to learn and write down what you're seeing. So research is a really great tool we have to better understand the world around us. but there's a lot of ways to make it better. So now I want to start talking about the community-based part of community-based research. And when I really understood how valuable and important this could be was after Hurricanes Irma and Maria tore through Puerto Rico in September of 2017. That was a really hard time. And once I was able to call my family and kind of start getting the news about what was happening, my mind shifted immediately to the reef. And I know that's not everyone's first thought because the island was in a really bad state. People lost their homes, people didn't have power to electricity, and there wasn't always secure access to food or water. But our coastal systems sustain us. As a small island, we heavily depend on them, and the long-term well-being of us and our communities depends on the well-being of those systems. So while coral reefs weren't everyone's immediate effort, I really thought about jobs and different economic opportunities we have for the people who live on this island. Tourism and fisheries depend on healthy coral reef systems. I also thought about future storms. Coral reefs and other underwater structures are really incredible because as a hurricane or a storm goes through them, they reduce the energy, slow it down, so the impact we see on shores where our homes are built are actually less. And as I was looking to the future, and a future where we're getting more of these disasters more regularly, we really need these systems to be okay. So how do we know if we're okay? We go out, we look at them, and if there's any fast or short-term restoration efforts that need to be started, we can get going on that. But getting a grant, getting your students together and flying out to a place isn't the fastest or most effective way to really look at somewhere. But we really didn't need that. My mind turned to my community that I was a part of. And I thought of everyone who I knew who spent their weekends snorkeling, or all of the dive instructors who had been training me since I was 11 years old. They're all experts in the water and have a wealth of knowledge. They spend tons of hours in these coral reefs learning about them, either for their own pleasure or to share the information with the people they're guiding. We have experts' eyes and ears who would really be able to know what was happening, how these systems change, that we weren't taking advantage of and weren't listening to. So I actually thought about this so much that I did my thesis research for my studies on how we can use technologies to make it easier for the people who are looking at these places every day to report back that information. And we got some pretty cool data of a ton of coral reefs from all over Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Something really important that I did realize is that we don't really need a disaster to take advantage and to really listen to the people who are in a place every day. Those communities were all there before the hurricanes, and they're still here now. And we have so much work to do with our planet that any time is a good time to bring them in and start understanding what's going on better. I do really want to note quickly that community-based science isn't anything new. It's actually something that's been done for millennia. Indigenous communities have been incredible stewards of their lands because they're able to really observe what's going around them. And as the conditions fluctuate and change, they're able to notice what's going on and adjust how they care for their land. There's also a lot of projects that are ongoing and a lot of systems that are in place for you to tap into if you want to learn more about community-based science. My first experience where I actually felt like a researcher was actually through a community-based reef fish survey program. And this was really cool because instead of having my first experience with science be in a lab or in a scary place, I was snorkeling with my friends, just learning and asking about the fish around me. And this made it a lot easier for me to understand that I really did like science and that's what I wanted to pursue. A lot of students don't get that opportunity. So by increasing access to these opportunities, we can let students know if they like science or not. And even if they don't want to be scientists, it's an opportunity for them to enjoy being outside and reporting about the world around them. So I mentioned earlier that research is a really good way to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening around us. It turns out community-based science is even more powerful at helping us care for our places. Because through community-based science, not only are we able to do more monitoring and getting more eyes on the water, but it's actually been shown through different studies and papers and research projects that the most successful natural reserves in our ocean are those that have strong community engagement. This is one of the biggest factors that determines how effectively we're actually caring for the places we protect, which is really exciting news. So I want to take this time to really invite you all to come together, bring in your friends, the people you love, and really start looking at the environments around you, whether that's on your walk to school, in your yard or in your balcony. There's so many opportunities for you to get involved in. There's things, if you're interested in projects based in Puerto Rico, you can look at the efforts of Estuario and Para la Naturaleza, who do projects all over the island, engaging people in conservation and research. There's different programs if you're interested in the water, like Patty's Project Aware and the Reef Environmental Education Foundation, which is how I really got started with these projects. And it can be as easy as taking a photo with your phone through apps like iNaturalist and Literati that help you catalog biodiversity or plastic pollution in your backyard. So it's really easy to start getting involved with caring for your home. And I really want to urge you guys to start looking around, start learning about your surroundings, and come together to take care of the places we love. Thank you.